Genres: drama, neo-noir, sci-fi, cyberpunk, Dogme 95. A forewarning, in lieu of a preface. The following text is an autopsy of the idea of salvation. It is a document recovered from the ruin of a future that mistook coherence for truth and consensus for peace. It extends and ultimately grapples with the central provocation of Elijah Milgram's The Great Endarkenment, philosophy for an age of hyperspecialization, that as knowledge fractures into incommensurable niches, shared reality becomes impossible. The world you are about to enter is the lived, felt consequence of that fragmentation. Its singular, uncomfortable theorem is that the final tyranny is not the imposition of a single story, but the abolition of the space in which conflicting stories might bleed into one another without seeking permission. Hyperspecialization, here, is revealed not just as an intellectual condition but as a political palliative, a meticulous anesthesia for the older, incurable human disease, the insistence on contrast. The unbearable, necessary friction between color and void, memory and oblivion, the map and the territory. This is not a manifesto for a new world. It is a field guide to navigating the permanent, glorious, and intolerable aftermath of the last one. Read it as a confession, a weapon, or a relic. The difference, like all things that matter, has become a matter of deeply specialized opinion. Scene 1, Fade in, EXT New Geneva, 3:17 a.m., perpetual twilight. The rain is not rain anymore, it is liquid phosphor refined from the crushed bones of old neon signs, falling in slow, deliberate sheets that glow with the sickly patience of a dying firefly. Each droplet lands on skin or concrete and lingers half a second too long, branding a faint afterimage directly onto the retina, a microscopic barcode that whispers your biometric sins back to the clouds before it evaporates. The city has been legally monochrome for 9 years running. Every wall, every vehicle, every human face must exist between government grays 001 through 009 only. Anything else a child's red balloon, a bruise, a sunset memory is classified as chromatic terrorism, punishable by on-the-spot surgical desaturation performed by smiling drones with diamond scalpels. A single street lamp, half its bulbs shot out by bored enforcers decades ago, coughs up a cone of diseased yellow that flickers between off and almost off, as if even electricity is afraid to commit to full illumination in a place where light itself is on probation. Narrator VO, voice like gravel soaked in cheap bourbon and cheaper regrets, the kind of voice that has watched every good thing die and still shows up late to the funeral. They took the colors first. Said hue was hate. Said harmony could only be achieved in grayscale. Then they took the shadows, because shadows asked questions light was too frightened to answer. All that's left now is the pigment behind your eyes, the private, stubborn midnight you carry under the lid. That's the last acre they haven't paved. That's where I live rent-free. Camera glides forward, low and predatory, pushing through the phosphor curtains like a shark through oil, until the frame is filled with the silhouette and threat. The silhouette resolves into Elias Vanta, late 30s going on extinct, coat the color of wet cemetery ash, collar turned up against a sun that committed suicide 11 years ago, fedora brim yanked so low it looks like it's trying to crawl off his head and hide, face split perfectly in half, one side kissed by the dying lamp, the other side already negotiating surrender terms with the dark. Between his fingers burns a cigarette that defies every law of combustion. The ember is pure absence, a pinprick black hole wearing paper clothing, drinking photons instead of giving them, growing darker the longer it burns. He exhales, the smoke starts as mercury, slides into cigarette ash gray, then apologizes for existing and vanishes mid-air like a guilty thought. Elias, speaking to no one and to every ghost listening through the rain, 11 years since they pulled the plug on the sun. 11 years of government dusk. You'd think a man could teach his soul to stop reaching for something that isn't coming back. You'd be wrong. He flicks the impossible cigarette away, it arcs once, lands in a glowing puddle, and instead of going out it keeps burning downward, eating a perfect cylindrical void straight through the phosphor water, through the asphalt, through memory itself, until the puddle forgets it was ever wet and the street forgets it ever had a hole. From the throat of the alley steps a woman carved out of rumor and long coats, legs that go all the way down to yesterday, face hidden beneath an umbrella made of polished obsidian glass so perfect it drinks the phosphor rain without leaving a single gleam. The falling light simply ceases to exist the moment it touches the canopy. She says nothing for a long, cinematic heartbeat, just extends one gloved hand holding a book that looks older than regret, leather so dark it appears wet, no title stamped on the cover, only a single embossed symbol that makes the eye skid away in pain, like trying to stare directly at the color that lives just past ultraviolet, the color God used before he invented sin. Elias, voice barely louder than the rain's hush, I thought every last copy had been pulped, pressed into gray bricks, and used to build more ministry bathrooms. Woman, voice like velvet dragged across a rusted razor blade, warm and lethal, pulp forgets shapes. Ink remembers everything. Even the shape of the knife. She opens the book at random. In this lightless light the words do not lie flat on the page, they rise an inch into the air, suspended in a black that makes the surrounding darkness look anemic by comparison, letters that seem to breathe. Elias leans in, reads one floating sentence aloud, tasting the forbidden syllables like contraband whiskey. The final censorship is the censorship of contrast. He closes the book with the slow, reverent care of a man sealing a coffin he secretly prays will stay empty forever. Elias, lady, just holding this thing is a one-way ticket to the re-education pits. Reading it out loud, that's suicide with deluxe paperwork and a complimentary lobotomy. Woman, then call me the bullet already chambered. I need a gun that still remembers what a shadow feels like when it wraps around your throat like a lover who knows all your safe words are lies. High above, a patrol drone hums into frame, searchlight stabbing down in perfect 1950s noir diagonals, the beam sweeps across them, stutters, glitches, unable to parse their outlines. For one impossible frame the light itself looks terrified of what it almost saw. Elias tips his fedora another lethal degree, the brim casts a shadow across his face suddenly has weight, texture, danger, real shadow, illegal shadow, the kind that used to hide kisses and revolutions. Elias, congratulations. You just hired the last private retina in New Geneva. My rates are steep. I don't take credits, I take memories the ministry hasn't managed to delete yet. The ones that still hurt when you touch them. He takes the book, the leather is fever warm, pulsing like a second, angrier heart trying to tunnel out of his ribcage. Elias, softer now, almost tender, first question, sister, who is afraid of the dark when the dark is the only thing left in the city still capable of telling the truth without filing a disclosure form? He slides the book inside his coat, pressing it flat against the place where rumor claims he keeps something that might once have been a heart. The woman turns to leave, her footsteps make no sound, the phosphor rain falls straight through her as if she's already practicing for the day she becomes a ghost full-time. Woman, voice drifting back like cigarette smoke from a grave, find the man who wrote it. Before they finish scooping the color out from behind his eyes and selling the scraps to the highest bidding nostalgia brokers. She is gone, only the obsidian umbrella remains, lying in the gutter like an oil slick that learned shame, reflecting a sky that forfeited its stars the same day it forfeited hope. Elias lights another black cigarette. This time the ember drinks the falling phosphor drops mid-air, swallowing their glow before they can touch him. Narrator VO, final and fatal, in a city that outlawed contrast, I just took a case that bleeds pure midnight. And midnight, darling, has teeth. Elias steps forward into the darkness parts for him like a bouncer who owes him money. One single frame, impossible and fleeting, a bead of genuine arterial red rolls down the inside of his wrist where the book kissed bare skin, bright enough to make the grayscale world flinch. Then the noir swallows even that, jealous and absolute. Fade to black so total, so deliberate, it feels less like a transition and more like a threat delivered in person. Scene 2, Fade in, int. Elias Vanta's office, 4:12 a.m., same endless night. The room hangs 33 stories above the void on a rusting skyhook that officially ceased to exist the same year the ministry outlawed the word indigo for being too suggestive of melancholy. The air inside is thick enough to chew, stale cigarette ghosts and the copper tang of old decisions, one desk scarred by decades of unpaid bills, one chair that has forgotten how to sit straight, one bottle of state-mandated transparent spirit once whiskey, now just clear regret that refuses to burn the throat or warm the stomach. A naked bulb dangles from a wire so ancient the insulation has flaked away like dead skin, the bulb is on permanent strike, refusing to glow, emitting only the faintest heat of resentment. Elias stands at the cracked window, back to the room, coat still dripping phosphor that refuses to dry. Below him, the gray river of citizens flows in perfect lockstep toward their assigned sleep pods, faces lit from underneath by the soft blue-white obedience screens embedded in their palms. On the desk behind him the book lies open like a gutted animal, pages rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths, as though dreaming in a language banned centuries ago. Elias hasn't turned around yet, he doesn't need to. He can feel the forbidden words crawling across the warped floorboards on inky legs, hunting for shadows deep enough to hide in. Elias, voice low, almost amused, you gonna stand in the doorway all night polishing your halo, or you gonna come in and bleed on my rug like a civilized monster? From the hallway darkness steps a courier tall, thin, ministry uniform pressed to surgical perfection, face hidden behind a porcelain smile mask so flawless it looks wet. The mask's painted grin is regulation width, exactly 4.7 centimeters of state-approved joy. The courier places a small brushed steel cube on the desk, it lands with the soft, final sound of a guillotine kissing the chopping block. Courier, voice auto-tuned to factory kindness, every syllable wrapped in bubble wrap, courtesy visit. The archlumen has upgraded your civic status from tolerated anachronism to active chromatic threat. Surrender the contraband pigment and receive voluntary desaturation with complementary lavender aromatherapy. Refuse and receive mandatory desaturation followed by involuntary de-existence and a tasteful memorial hashtag. Elias turns, slow as turning a page you know will hurt, the black cigarette still burning downward, eating itself into deeper absence. Elias, tell your boss I'm flattered. Been a long time since anybody threatened me with a color wheel instead of the usual bullets. He lifts the cube, it's fever warm, humming like a trapped wasp. Inside, suspended in clear gel, floats a single human eye iris, the impossible black of fresh octavo ink poured into a starless night. The eye blinks once, slow, deliberate, like it's been waiting years to see him again. Elias, voice softer than the rain outside, that's the author's, isn't it left optic. They always start with the windows. Courier, correct. Right optic scheduled for live auction tomorrow, 1900 hours sharp, palace of permitted spectrums. Starting bid, one unredacted childhood memory that still draws blood when you touch it. The courier pivots with mechanical grace, pauses at the threshold. Courier, 48 hours, Mr. Vanta. After that the city's facial recognition mesh will forget your bone structure. Even the phosphor rain will deny it ever kissed your face. Door clicks shut with the politeness of a coffin lid. Elias alone again with the book and the orphaned eye, the room feels smaller, like it's inhaling. He pries the cube open with a thumbnail, gel oozes like cold albumin, he lifts the eye between thumb and forefinger, holds it up to the striking bulb, the pupil dilates greedily, drinking the nothing light as if starving. Elias, whispering to the eye, they always take the windows to the soul first, don't they? Then they board up the house and pretend nobody's home. He lowers the eye onto an open page, the ink reacts instantly, black tendrils rise like smoke, coil around the orb, caress it, then drag it down between the lines until the paper swallows it whole with a wet, satisfied sound. The page now bears a new illustration, one perfect black iris staring straight out at the reader, unblinking, accusatory, alive. Elias closes the book, the spine creaks like old knees. He opens it again, the eye has vanished, but every margin now bleeds fresh handwriting in a spidery scrawl that definitely wasn't there an hour ago. He reads one new line aloud, voice cracking like a 78 RPM record played too many times, find the woman who still dreams in disallowed wavelengths. She keeps the last unbleached shadow in a locket made of midnight. He snaps the book shut, the sound ricochets around the room like a .38 in a cathedral. Elias, to the empty room and every ghost listening through the walls, guess I'm going to a place even the darkness forgot to renew its lease on. He shrugs deeper into the coat, slides the book into the inside pocket directly over the place. Rumor claims he sold his heart for a pack of unfiltered memories. At the door he pauses, glances back at the dead bulb still hanging like a hanged man who refuses to swing. Elias, keep the light off, pal. Somebody's gotta remember what off feels like when the whole damn world's stuck on stun. He steps into the hallway, the door sighs shut behind him. Behind him, alone in the office, the bulb flickers once, twice, then ignites for one defiant second in a color that has no name yet, something between arterial red and the last scream of a dying star. Then it goes dark again, darker than before, as if ashamed of its own rebellion. Cut to black. A single drop of real, wet, impossible red falls from mid-air and hits the scarred desktop where the eye rested. It spreads slowly, deliberately, into the perfect outline of an old-fashioned keyhole doorway. The doorway trembles, waiting. Scene 3. Int. The descent, sub-level 47, later that night. The elevator that officially never existed coughs Elias out into a shaft that smells of rust, wet paper, and the particular kind of despair that only grows in places light has been legally forbidden to enter. Walls weep black condensation, every drop that hits the floor hisses and writes a single forbidden letter before evaporating. After a minute the letters spell help in a handwriting no child has been taught in 30 years. Elias walks alone, coat collar up, the book pulsing against his ribs like a second, angrier heart trying to kick its way out. Overhead, the emergency strips are dead, but the darkness itself glows faintly, a bruised violet that hurts the eyes more than total black wood. It's the color of bruises on the soul of the city. He passes abandoned subway cars converted into mass confession booths, inside each one, skeletons in gray jumpsuits still clutch microphones, mouths frozen mid-apology to nobody. A child's voice, recorded and looped, drifts from hidden speakers, please remain calm. Color is a symptom of unrest. Breathe the approved spectrum. Elias keeps walking. His footsteps make no echo, the dark is greedy tonight, swallowing sound the way it once swallowed stars. At the end of the platform waits a door made of welded license plates from the year 2029, the last year private cars were allowed to have color. The plates still remember: candy apple red, electric lime, midnight blue. The paint flakes off in morning. On the door someone has spray painted in luminous white: the woman who dreams in disallowed wavelengths works the late shift in Hell's darkroom. Elias pushes the door. It opens without resistance, as though it's been waiting for him since before he was born. Int. Hell's darkroom, continuous. A cavernous former film processing lab, now lit only by red safe lights that somehow still burn after decades without electricity. The glow is the color of fresh blood in old photographs. Enormous drying lines crisscross the ceiling like spiderwebs strung with thousands of undeveloped negatives. On each strip, ghostly images of sunsets, rainbows, human faces in full color, all illegal, all waiting to be born or destroyed. In the center of the room, beneath the red glow, stands the woman from the new margin note. She is tall, skin the color of untouched photographic paper, hair a waterfall of pure silver that catches the safe light and throws it back as violet fire. Around her neck hangs a locket the size of a heart, forged from absolute blackness, no reflection, no refraction, just void-wearing jewelry. She is elbow deep in a tray of developer, rocking it gently. The liquid is black. Whatever she is developing is drinking the light instead of revealing an image. Lilith, the woman without looking up: you're late, Vanta. I started dreaming about you before you were conceived. That's how behind schedule you are. Elias stops 10 feet away. The book thumps once against his chest, hard, like it recognizes her. Elias' traffic was murder. Had to dodge a few kindness drones handing out free amnesia. Lilith lifts a dripping print from the tray with tongs. It is completely black. She pins it to the line anyway. The negative darkness spreads across the paper like spilled ink, claiming new territory. Lilith, they took the author's left eye tonight. Tomorrow they auction the right. After that there'll be no one left who remembers what a spectrum felt like when it was still allowed to be dangerous. She finally turns. Her own eyes are mismatched, one the red of the safe light, the other the absolute black of the locket, mirror images of the author's stolen pair. Lilith can't I knew you'd come. The book always sends its gun when the ink starts running scared. She opens the locket. Inside is no photograph, just a perfect sphere of living shadow that moves like slow smoke. It reaches out toward Elias, curious. Elias, lady, I'm just a man with a borrowed heartbeat and a bad habit of saying yes to beautiful apocalypses. Lilith smiles. It is not kind, but it is honest. Lilith, good. Because the last unbleached shadow is getting restless. It wants to go home. And home is wherever the sun is still hiding from them. She closes the locket. The shadow inside whimpers, a sound like film tearing. Lilith can't there's a train that doesn't exist leaving from a platform that was erased at 5:57 a.m. It only runs in total dark. Be on it. Bring the book. Bring the iodate. Bring whatever's left of your willingness to burn the world's last night light. She turns back to her trays. The black print she pinned earlier now shows an image forming in reverse: white sky bleeding into black sun. Elias, and if I say no, Lilith, then tomorrow the city wakes up in perfect, painless, irreversible beige. And you'll spend the rest of your life trying to remember what red felt like when it still had the guts to bleed. Elias tips his hat. The shadow in the locket reaches toward the brim, strokes it like a cat. Elias, 5:57 a.m. I'll bring the gun. You bring the dark. He turns to leave. Behind him, every negative on the drying line suddenly ignites without flame, burning pure white, then black, then nothing. The last thing we see before the safe lights die, Lilith's silhouette holding the locket aloft as the captive shadow grows until it fills the entire room, swallowing even the red. Total darkness. A single heartbeat, his, hers, or the book's thuds once in the black. Cut to black. Scene 4. EXT Platform 0, 5:43 a.m., the hour that was deleted from clocks. The platform exists only in the gap between two official sublevels, a negative space the city forgot to fill. You reach it by walking down a staircase that counts backward from 13 to 0, then stepping through a maintenance hatch that is welded shut from the outside but swings open if you know the right light to whisper. No lights. Not even the bruised violet emergency glow. Here the darkness has weight, it leans on your shoulders like an old debt. The air tastes of coal dust, ozone, and something sweet that died young. A single analog clock, face cracked, hands frozen at 5:57 forever, hangs from a chain. Someone has painted over the numbers with black paint so thick it drips like tar. The clock ticks anyway. Elias arrives alone, coat heavy with rain that never fell. The book under his arm now instead of against his heart, it got too warm there, started leaving burn marks on the inside of his ribs. He lights a black cigarette. The ember drinks the dark instead of piercing it. For a 3-second radius around the void glow he can see, rails that vanish into a tunnel mouth shaped like an open scream. A faded sign that once read Sunward Express, next stop, before. Someone has scratched out before and written remember in rust. Footsteps behind him. Soft. Bare feet on cold concrete. Lilith steps out of the dark wearing the same silver hair like armor and the locket like a loaded gun. She carries no bag, no coat, only the sphere of living shadow cupped in her bare hands. It has grown since the darkroom, now it's the size of a child's head and restless, tendrils licking at her wrists. Lilith, you're early. Most men show up late to their own resurrection. Elias, I've been late to everything else. Figured I'd try punctuality before the world ends. She smiles with half her mouth. The red eye glints, the black eye drinks. A low tremor runs through the platform. Far down the tunnel something vast exhales. The train arrives without ever approaching. One moment the tunnel is empty, the next a locomotive forged from obsidian and old movie theater curtains is simply there, brakes sighing like a dying jazz singer. No headlights. The engine glows from inside with the deep red of a darkroom bulb, the color of secrets being born. Only one car. Doors yawning open like a confession. Painted on the side in flaking gold leaf, the midnight local, destination, wherever the sun will stops turning. Inside the car, seats upholstered in black velvet that still remembers the shape of every passenger who ever dreamed on it. Windows painted over from the outside with liquid night, a conductor made of shadow and ticket punch stands at the door. No face, only suggestion of one. He extends a hand gloved in absence. Conductor voice of every announcement you ever ignored, tickets, please. Currency accepted, one memory that still hurts, or one color you refuse to forget. Lilith opens her hand. The sphere of shadow leaps from her palm into the conductor's. It shrinks, folds, becomes a perfect black ticket with silver edges. Elias hesitates, then reaches inside his coat, pulls out the memory of the first sunrise he ever saw age 6, before the filters. He crushes it between his fingers. It bleeds orange light for a heartbeat, then turns to ash that arranges itself into a second ticket. The conductor punches both tickets. The holes are shaped like tiny suns. They board. Int. Midnight local, continuous. The doors seal with a sound like the last page of a banned book closing. The car is almost empty. One old woman knitting with yarn the color purple used to be. One teenage boy staring at his own reflection in the black window, crying without sound. One seat already occupied by a silhouette that might be the author, might be the missing right eye wearing a trench coat. Lilith and Elias sit opposite each other. The shadow sphere, now ticket-shaped, floats between them like a dark lantern. The train lurches forward without moving. The tunnel walls outside the painted windows begin to flow backward, revealing impossible vistas, forests of pure indigo, oceans of liquid gold leaf, cities built from lost neon signs. Lilith's next stop is the Palace of Permitted Spectrums. They're auctioning the author's remaining eye in exactly 41 minutes. After that, the spectrum itself gets euthanized. Elias, then we crash the party. I've got a book that bites and a shadow that's tired of captivity. Lilith leans forward. The locket at her throat cracks open on its own. The shadow inside swells until it fills the entire car, turning every surface into living night. Lilith, one rule on this train: whatever color you still carry inside will be tested. If it fades, you get off at the next stop and you never find your way back to dark again. Elias opens his coat. The book falls open on his lap. The stolen eye staring up from the page, now fully alive, pupil dilating with excitement. The train accelerates, though there is no sound of wheels on track. Outside the windows the lost colors rush by faster, screaming to be let in. Elias looks straight at Lilith. Elias, I've still got one red left. It's the color of the first time I realized the world was lying to me. Been keeping it in a place they'll never look. He taps his chest, right over the burn mark the book left. Lilith's red eye flares like a struck match. Lilith, good. Because the palace only opens its doors for people willing to bleed in frequencies that were outlawed before they were born. The train plunges into absolute black. For 3 heartbeats there is no car, no seats, no passengers, only the feeling of falling upward through every night the city ever tried to forget. Then the red safe light inside the car brightens to blood. A new sign flickers above the door: next stop, the place where light goes to be forgiven. The shadow between them grows teeth. Fade to black so pure it rings like a bell. Scene 5. Int. Ext the midnight local, approaching the Palace of Permitted Spectrums, no time left. The train no longer pretends to move through space. It moves through prohibition. Every lurch peels away another law, first the law against color, then the law against memory, finally the law against hope. Inside the car the red safe light has become arterial, pulsing like a heart that was told its turn to live. The passengers who were merely ghosts a moment ago are now solid. The old woman's purple yarn has become real wool again, violent and royal. The crying boy's reflection in the window now shows him with green eyes he was born with but never allowed to keep. Lilith stands in the aisle, silver hair floating as if underwater. The locket is fully open. The captive shadow has grown to the size of a panther and paces between the seats, leaving footprints of pure absence that smoke. Lilith, quiet, almost tender, we're here. Or rather, here has finally agreed to remember us. Elias looks out the painted black window. The glass has become transparent for the first time. Outside, the Palace of Permitted Spectrums floats in low orbit above the dead city like a second moon made entirely of white neon and surgical steel. It is blinding. Not beautiful, blinding. Every surface emits pure, weaponized daylight engineered to burn out any retina still capable of seeing contrast. Drones shaped like seraphim circle it, wings of mirrored glass reflecting the palace back at itself in infinite regression. The train slows without brakes. The rails have become a single strand of darkness stretched between the underworld and the overworld like a tightrope over oblivion. The doors open onto nothing. Just vacuum, starless and cold. Lilith steps out first. The shadow panther leaps from the locket and becomes a bridge of living night beneath her feet, solid enough to walk on. Elias follows. The book is now open in his hands, the stolen left eye has grown to the size of a fist and hovers above the page like a dark moon. Stolen eye voice like ink poured directly into the brain. They're selling my brother upstairs. Lot 777. Current bid, every remaining sunset on Earth. The shadow bridge carries them upward through vacuum that should kill them but doesn't, because the dark remembers they still have business with light. As they rise, the palace grows details, windows made of one-way mirrors facing inward so the elite can watch the surface world starve for color. Balconies where attendees wear gowns and tuxedos woven from government-approved grayscale silk that shifts between 001 and 009 in slow, nauseating waves. A marquee in soft pastel letters, tonight only, final auction of pre-Endarkenment pigment proceeds fund eternal equilibrium. They reach a service hatch on the underside of the palace. Lilith presses her palm to it. The metal drinks her shadow and swings open like a mouth that has been waiting to scream. Int. Palace of permitted spectrums, service corridor, continuous. Inside, everything is white so pure it feels violent. The walls emit light from within, no shadows possible. Even breathing feels like trespassing. But the shadow panther is immune. It grows until it fills the corridor, becoming a moving corridor of true black inside the white. They walk inside the panther's body. Safe. Untouchable. Elias' place gives me the creeps. Too much forgiveness in the air. Makes my teeth itch. Lilith, wait till you see the ballroom. They've turned forgiveness into a light show. They reach a balcony overlooking the auction hall. Int. Grand auction hall, continuous. A cathedral of light. Thousands of the elite sit in concentric circles wearing VR lenses that force their eyes to perceive only state-sanctioned pastels. On stage, beneath a spotlight made of weaponized noon, the author's right eye, still alive, suspended in a crystal orb filled with liquid diamond. It blinks slowly, tears of pure indigo rolling down the inside of the orb. The archlumen presides from a levitating throne of mirrored smartphones. Skin like bleached porcelain, eyes scrolling live sentiment data from the surface. Archlumen voice layered with 10,000 influencers. Lot 777. The final unauthorized spectrum. Do I hear 1 billion childhood sunrises paddles rise? Each paddle is a child's confiscated crayon melted down and reshaped. Elias feels the book vibrate so hard it almost leaps from his hands. Stolen eye whisper directly into Elias's skull now. Lilith releases the shadow panther fully. The entire ballroom goes dark. Not dim. Dark. The kind of dark that existed before God said let there be light and then immediately regretted it. Screams. Beautiful, human, unfiltered screams. In the darkness the shadow panther becomes a tidal wave. Elias steps forward, lights his last black cigarette. The ember finally burns upward for the first time, a tiny red star in absolute night. Elias' voice carrying like a gunshot in a confessional auction over, folks. The dark just outbid every last one of you. The stolen left eye rises from the book, meets its twin across the void. Together they open wide. And for one impossible second the entire palace is flooded with every color that was ever outlawed, every sunset, every bruise, every neon sign that ever promised something dangerous after midnight. The elite tear off their VR lenses and weep in frequencies they forgot bodies could produce. The archlumen stands, furious, beautiful, terrified. Archlumen, you cannot return what was consensually deleted. Elias, watch me. He opens the book to the center page. The page is now a hole. A literal hole into somewhere else. The reunited eyes fly into it. The shadow panther follows. Lilith takes Elias's hand. Lilith, time to remind the sky what it feels like to bleed at dawn. They step through the page together. Behind them the palace lights explode, not with fire, but with color. Pure, illegal, uncontrollable color that burns white hot and keeps burning. The last thing we see, the archlumen reaching toward the hole as every screen in their throne body cracks and bleeds real red. Fade to black. But not for long. A single line appears, handwritten in fresh octavo ink: the Endarkenment has only just begun. Scene 6. EXT, the ruins of the palace of permitted spectrums, dawn that wasn't supposed to happen. The floating citadel is bleeding color from every fracture. Pastel light leaks out like cheap dye, staining the permanent twilight below in sickly rainbows that hurt more than the old gray ever did. Chunks of mirrored steel rain down slowly, turning end over end, reflecting a sky that is trying to remember how to be blue and failing gloriously. Elias and Lilith stand on a broken balcony made of cracked smartphone screens. The book is closed now, quiet for the first time since it was handed to him in the rain, but the cover is warm, almost feverish. Below them, the city stirs. People are looking up. Actually looking up. Some remove their mandated lenses for the first time in years and scream at the raw input. A wind that has no legal right to exist moves across the ruins, carrying the smell of ozone, petrichor, and something metallic, possibility, maybe. Footsteps on shattered glass. Measured. Unhurried. Someone walking through the wreckage the way a librarian walks through stacks. A new figure emerges from a spiral staircase that is still burning with white fire yet somehow supports weight. He is tall, thin to the point of accusation, dressed in a three-piece suit the color of absolute zero, so black it makes the surrounding darkness look gray. Type in, a tiny silver Mobius strip. On his lapel, a dried flower that might once have been a rose but is now only the memory of red. His face is young and ancient at the same time. Eyes mismatched like Lilith's, but reversed, one burning magnesium white, the other a black so total it has gravitational pull. In his left hand he carries a slim hardcover book bound in matte blackboard. No title on the cover. Only a single debossed phrase in negative space: the great Endarkenment philosophy for an age of hyperspecialization. He stops 10 feet away. Regards the bleeding palace, the stunned city, Elias and Lilith, with the mild curiosity of a man who has seen every possible apocalypse and found them all slightly under-argued. The specialist voice calm, precise, lightly amused, the accent of someone who has read every language and chosen to speak in none of them completely. Congratulations. You have successfully performed an amateur revolution. Loud, photogenic, emotionally satisfying. 10 out of 10 for catharsis. 0 out of 10 for sustainability. He opens his book. The pages are black. The text is white, microscopic, dense as neutron star crust. The specialist can't allow me to introduce myself. I am the last hyperspecialist. My domain is the narrowest possible, the study of what happens after the rebellion wins and discovers winning was the easy part. Lilith's shadow panther growls low, hackles of pure absence rising. The specialist does not flinch. He simply turns a page. The growl stops, confused, as if it has suddenly forgotten the protocol for threat. The specialist relax. I'm not here to restore the arch lumen. That particular operating system has crashed beyond recovery. I'm here to prevent you from installing an even worse one in its place. Elias steps forward, hand instinctively near the book that is no longer under his coat but somehow floating at his side like an obedient raven. Elias friend, we just returned color to a city that had its eyes gouged out. If you've got a complaint, take a number and bleed in line. The specialist smiles. It is not warm, but it is genuine. The specialist color is the low-hanging fruit of liberation. Any angry poet with a match can return pigment. The real question, the one your little bonfire of the vanities has now made inevitable, is this: what do 8 billion newly repigmented humans do with their freshly screaming retinas when the novelty wears off in approximately 6 weeks and the old pathologies return wearing brighter clothing? He closes his book. The sound is the quietest gunshot ever fired. The specialist can't. My name is unnecessary. You may call me the specialist, or you may call me the aftercare. I have come to offer the only philosophy ruthless enough to survive actual victory. He extends the black book toward Elias. Not aggressively. Simply an offer. The specialist inside are the operating instructions for an age that has just remembered it has eyes and will very shortly remember it also has teeth. Read it, or don't. Either way, the bill is coming due. And interest, as always, is compounded in blood and nostalgia. Lilith's red eye narrows. Her black eye dilates with something that might be respect. Lilith, you wrote the original manuscript, didn't you, before they cut the author into souvenir pieces? The specialist inclines his head, neither confirmation nor denial. The specialist authorship is a childish concept in an age of hyperspecialization. I merely edited reality until it agreed to bleed in the margins. He turns to leave the way he came, walking across burning white fire that parts for him like polite curtains. The specialist, without looking back, enjoy the sunrise while it lasts. It is scheduled to be obsolete by Thursday. When the screaming starts again, and it will, you will know where to find me. I will be in the only place darker than the dark you just liberated, the place where meaning goes to negotiate its surrender. He steps off the edge of the balcony. Does not fall. Simply ceases to be there. The black book remains, floating in mid-air, spinning slowly. Elias reaches for it. The moment his fingers touch the cover, every color in the sky, newborn, raw, screaming, dims by 1%, as if acknowledging a new creditor. Close on the debossed title. A new line appears beneath it, etched by invisible hand: freedom is not the opposite of control. Boredom is. The palace beneath them groans, begins its final, colorful collapse into the city it once tried to blind. Elias and Lilith stand side by side, two silhouettes against the first illegal dawn in 11 years. Elias quiet, almost smiling: I liked it better when the bad guys were easier to shoot. Lilith: welcome to the age of hyperspecialization, darling. The war just got a bibliography. Fade out on the floating black book, still spinning, patient as entropy. Scene 7. Int. The last unlit room, 3 weeks after the palace fell. A room that exists only because every map, satellite, and memory of it has been meticulously erased. You reach it by walking through a door that appears only when you stop looking for it. No windows. No doors once you're inside. Only 4 walls of perfect matte black that drink every photon and give nothing back. The great Endarkenment calls this shade Vanta Black 9.1, the color of a conscience after the trial. A single object occupies the center, an old wooden lectern scarred by cigarette burns and knife carvings. On it rests the specialist's black book, now open to a page that was blank 3 weeks ago but is now crowded with fresh white text that keeps rearranging itself when no one is looking directly at it. Around the lectern, 5 people stand in a loose circle, lit only by the faint white glow of the moving words. Elias, coat finally off, sleeves rolled, showing forearms covered in fresh ink burns shaped like forbidden words. Lilith, silver hair braided tight, the locket now empty and cracked, hanging like a spent bullet casing. The author, both eyes restored but milk blind, feeling the air with long pale fingers as if reading braille written by ghosts. A teenage girl from the midnight local, green eyes still leaking real green tears every few minutes. And the specialist, unchanged, suit still absolute zero, standing with the relaxed posture of a man who has already read the last page of history and found the footnote amusing. The air is thick with the smell of scorched paper and new fear. The specialist's soft, almost conversational attendance is perfect. Good. The age of compulsory attendance has begun. He does not raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The room itself leans in to listen. The specialist can't. 3 weeks ago you returned color to 8 billion retinas. A noble gesture. Aesthetically impeccable. Utterly catastrophic. He turns a page with one finger. The white text crawls like maggots. The specialist's symptom report, week 1, euphoria, public orgies in Vermilion, children painting entire streets with their own blood just to watch it dry into new shades. Week 2, nostalgia markets selling bottled sunrises at black market prices, suicide rates in Pantone 186. Week 3, the first political party founded exclusively on the color mauve has already scheduled a genocide in complementary teal. Elias shifts his weight. The floor creaks like an old confession. Elias, we didn't start this to babysit humanity's hangover. We started it to stop the forced lobotomy. The specialist and you succeeded, congratulations. The patient is no longer lobotomized. He is now free to be every kind of insane that lobotomy was invented to prevent. Lilith steps forward. The cracked locket swings. Lilith, then give us the cure. You wrote the disease. You must have drafted the antidote. The specialist, a small, sad smile. There is no antidote. Only a narrower disease. A higher resolution cage. That is what hyperspecialization is for. He closes the book. The room goes completely dark for one heartbeat. When the glow returns, the lectern now holds a single object, a human heart made of dense black glass, still beating slowly, wetly. The specialist, behold, the heart of the next regime. It will be voluntary. It will be beautiful. It will be so precisely tailored to each individual's secret boredom that no one will notice the bars until they are already grateful for them. The author speaks for the first time. Voice like dry leaves turning pages inside a tomb. The author, you want to replace their spectacle with your seminar. Same anesthesia, better syllabus. The specialist, precisely. But my anesthesia leaves the patient awake enough to applaud their own incarceration. That is the only ethical improvement possible after the failure of both light and darkness to civilize anyone. The teenage girl with green eyes wipes her face, leaving streaks of living emerald on her cheeks. Green-eyed girl, so what do we do? Put the gray back, blind them again? The specialist, no. You teach them to blind themselves, one perfectly curated obsession at a time. You give them each a private, infinitely deep rabbit hole so absorbing they will beg to be lowered in and thank you for pulling up the rope. Elias laughs. It is not a happy sound. Elias, you're offering us a deal with a prettier devil. The specialist, I'm offering you the only devil that has ever won in the long term. His name is meaning. And he is starving. He opens the glass heart with both hands. Inside is not blood but a tiny, perfect, spinning galaxy made of pure white text. The specialist take it, distribute it. Let every human choose their own hyperspecialization so total that the concept of society becomes nostalgic. No more mobs. No more revolutions. Only 8 billion perfectly satisfied solipsists orbiting their private gods. Peace through terminal obsession. Silence so complete it has weight. Lilith looks at Elias. Elias looks at the author. The author looks at nothing and sees everything. The author quiet, final. There is another way. We let them keep the color. We let them keep the chaos. And we stay awake so someone remembers that freedom still includes the freedom to make terrible, spectacular mistakes. The specialist regards him for a long moment. The specialist, that is the romantic option. It lasts, on average, 11 years. Then the cycle reboots with better marketing. He shrugs, almost kindly. The specialist chews quickly. The heart is cooling. Once it stops beating, the offer expires and raw humanity gets to keep its mess. I wonder which terror you love more. The glass heart beats once, twice, slower. Close on Elias's hand hovering over it. The black book on the lectern flips itself open to a blank page. A single new line writes itself in real time. The final censorship is the censorship of interesting mistakes. Elias looks at the line. Looks at the heart. Looks at the 5 faces around him, some hopeful, some ruined, all human. He lowers his hand not to take the heart, but to close the specialist's book with a gentle, deliberate snap. Elias, thanks for the seminar, Professor. We'll take the mess. The glass heart cracks down the middle. The tiny galaxy of text spills out like luminous dust and vanishes before it hits the floor. The specialist sighs, not angry, almost relieved. The specialist, very well. Enjoy your interesting mistakes. I'll be in the margin when the reviews come in. He steps backward into the wall and is simply gone. The room remembers it never had a 5th wall. The black book remains, now open to the page Elias closed. The line is still there, but beneath it, in fresh red that drips like real blood, round 1 goes to the amateurs. See you in 11 years. The 5 of them stand in the returning dark. No one speaks. Outside, very far away, a child laughs in a color that has no name yet. Fade to black. The only sound, 5 heartbeats refusing to synchronize. Intermission, black screen. A single match strikes in absolute dark. The flame reveals Elias Vanta, older, scarred, sitting alone in row F, seat 9 of an empty movie theater, cigarette dangling, eyes bloodshot but amused. Behind him, the giant screen is frozen on the exact frame where the palace of permitted spectrums explodes in illegal color from the first half. Elias looks dead into the camera like he has been waiting 2 decades for the cigarette break. Elias dry, smoke curling, all right. Intermission. House lights up. Go piss, buy overpriced corn, text your ex that the world ended and they missed it. But while you're doing that, let me save you an hour of Reddit threads. He stands, steps out of the theater seat and walks straight onto the screen itself. The frozen explosion liquefies into live footage behind him. Elias Conti, quick recap, because the specialist was right, nobody remembers should pass the pretty colors. Snap of his fingers, brutal montage, streets painted in arterial orgies, suicide by sunset parties, politicians murdering each other over complementary hues. Elias Conti, 11 years ago we blew up the palace. Returned every band color to a city that had its eyes legally removed. Thought we were heroes. Another snap rooftop scene, the five of them burning the last instruction manual, color draining out of the world like blood down a sink. Elias Conti, we chose raw reality. No curators. No specialists, just humans being messy, beautiful, terrible humans with no owner's manual. He lights a fresh cigarette off the burning film reel itself, the celluloid sizzles. Elias, the next 11 years nobody filmed them. Cameras felt obscene. We fought, fucked, forgave, forgot, starved, sang, and somehow didn't nuke ourselves into permanent beige. Close up on his face, inches from the lens, you can smell the smoke through the screen. Elias, the kids born after the fire grew up without a single rule written in ink. They think stories are something you live first and write later, if ever. Elias leaning even closer, so if you came back expecting a sequel with bigger explosions or a neat moral bow, turn your phone light on and leave now. The second half has no plot armor, no voice-over salvation, and definitely no specialist with a better PowerPoint. He flicks the cigarette straight at the camera lens, it hits with a shower of sparks and becomes the projector bulb itself. Elias' final, almost tender, lights down in 30 seconds. If you stay, you don't get to look away when it stops being pretty. He tips an imaginary hat, walks backward into the dark, the screen swallows him. Screen goes pure black. Single line, white typewriter text on black, second half begins in the dark. Stay there. 10 full seconds of absolute silence and blackness. Then, fade in on the raw, unbranded dawn of the new world. Scene 8, fade in, EXT New Geneva, 22 years after the palace, 3:17 a.m., the hour that still refuses to obey clocks. The city is no longer screaming, it is listening. Real night has returned, thick, star-drunk, merciless. Streets are lit only by fire barrels, hand-crank lanterns, and the occasional flare of a welder's torch high on a scaffold. No neon. No billboards. Just the low red glow of embers and the colder white of starlight arguing over who owns the dark. A hand-painted sign on a toppled tram, letters made from melted vinyl records, color is voluntary. So is hope. So is despair. Choose carefully. Wind moves through the ruins like a bored cat, knocking over empty cans that ring like distant bells. A lone figure walks the center line of the old boulevard, Elias Vanta, 50-something, white hair whipping in the wind, patched leather jacket stitched with constellations made from unraveled cassette tape. The original book now completely blank, oilskin wrapped hangs from his belt like a broken sword. He stops beneath the same broken street lamp from scene 1. Someone has replaced the bulb with a mason jar full of fireflies. They blink in slow, exhausted Morse code that translates to, "Still here." Elias smiles, small and tired, and lights a normal cigarette with a wooden match. The flame shows his face, older, but the eyes are still dangerous. Elias to the night, 22 years. We survived freedom. Barely. Footsteps. Light, deliberate. From every alley mouth at once, 10 figures emerge, cloaked in black, faces hidden under hoods stitched with moving constellations just like the young stranger from the intermission teaser, but older, harder, armed. They carry weapons that should not exist anymore, crossbows loaded with glass bolts filled with liquid starlight, machetes wrapped in pages torn from pre-Endarkenment encyclopedias, one woman with a riot shield made from the melted down smile mask of a kindness drone. Their leader steps forward, hood down. It's the young stranger from the teaser, now 30-ish, scar across the mouth, eyes still human brown but burning with something ancient. Scarred leader Elias Vanta. The Council of Unwritten Tomorrows has voted. You are hereby charged with excessive nostalgia for chaos. Elias exhales smoke, unhurried. Elias, that's a new one. Usually it's just being alive too long. The 10 spread into a semicircle, weapons up. The fireflies in the mason jar suddenly go dark, as if someone flipped a switch labeled hope. Elias drops the cigarette, grinds it under his boot. Elias, 10 of you. 1 of me. Feels unfair, for you. Action ignites. Elias moves first old, but the muscle memory of 11 revolutions is still perfect. He flicks the oilskin wrapped book like a throwing knife, it spins, pages flaring open, blank white pages flashing like magnesium, blinding half the attackers. Scarred leader lunges with the encyclopedia machete, Elias sidesteps, grabs the wrist, uses the momentum to slam the attacker into the lamppost, firefly jar shatters, releasing a galaxy of living sparks that swarm the attackers like angry fairies. 2 crossbow bolts hiss past Elias's ear, he catches the third out of the air, yes, catches it and snaps it in half, the liquid starlight inside explodes into a blinding nova, lighting the entire street white for 3 heartbeats. A woman with the drone shield charges, Elias ducks, grabs a loose manhole cover, uses it like Captain America's shield, slams her backward into a fire barrel, embers explode upward in a red column. Elias is bleeding now, shallow cut across the ribs, but grinning like a wolf that just remembered it has teeth. Elias panting, you kids read the wrong chapter. Chaos isn't nostalgia. It's a love language. Scarred leader recovers, pulls a flare gun loaded with something that glows ultraviolet. Fires point blank. Elias doesn't dodge. He opens the blank book in front of his chest like a shield. The ultraviolet flare hits the open pages and vanishes, sucked into the white void between them. The book drinks the light, then spits it back out as pure darkness, a black beam that punches straight through the scarred leader's cloak and pins them to the wall 10 feet away, unharmed but immobilized in living shadow. The remaining 9 freeze. The street is suddenly, shockingly quiet except for the crackle of the overturned fire barrel. Elias closes the book. The shadow releases the leader, who drops to their knees, gasping. Elias' voice soft, almost kind, go home. Tell your council the last reader is retired, but the dark still takes my calls. The attackers back away, vanish into alleys like smoke. Elias stands alone again, bleeding, breathing hard, but upright. He looks up at the real stars, no filters, no commentary. Elias to the sky, still here. Somewhere distant, a child laughs in the dark, real, unafraid. Elias shoulders the book, limps off into the night that finally belongs to no one. Behind him, the fireflies regroup inside the broken jar, blink once in unison, then fly upward in a living constellation shaped like an open hand waving goodbye. The street lamp flickers back to life with honest, ordinary light. Fade out on the blank book hanging from Elias's belt, one corner now stained with fresh red that refuses to dry. Scene 9. Int. Ext, the Observatory of Forgotten Things, dawn, same day. High on the ruined hill that used to be the Ministry of Consensus Reality, an old astronomical observatory stands half collapsed, dome cracked open like an eggshell. Inside, the giant telescope is long gone, replaced by a circle of mismatched chairs around a fire pit made from the melted down remains of the Archlumin's throne. Dawn is trying to happen, but the sky is still deciding. The horizon bleeds a bruised violet that might be the memory of color or just exhaustion. 5 people sit around a fire. Elias, ribs wrapped in a strip torn from his own jacket, blood already soaking through. Lilith, older, silver hair now streaked with charcoal from years of smoke signals. The author, blind eyes open to the sky, smiling like he's watching a private film. The green-eyed woman now called Verides, welding goggles pushed up on her forehead, eyes normal but luminous in the firelight. And the scarred leader from the street fight, hood down, face washed clean of war paint, looking suddenly very young. Between them on the ground, the original blank book, open. A single fresh page has appeared overnight. On it, in charcoal and blood, we tried to save the world. The world saved itself by refusing to be saved. Good job, assholes. No one has spoken for a long time. Finally Verides pokes the fire. Sparks rise like tiny, honest suns. Verides so that it we fight off the new Puritans, bleed on the old book, and tomorrow another council with better slogans shows up. Elias shrugs, winces at the ribs probably. Freedom's a subscription service now. Cancel anytime, but the late fees are murder. The scarred leader name revealed in a whisper, Juno stares into the flames. Juno, we thought if we forced everyone to live without stories, without scripture, the fighting would stop. Turns out people just invent worse gods when you take away the old ones. Lilith leans forward, picks up the book, turns to the last blank page. Lilith, then we stop giving them blanks to fill with their own apocalypses. She tears the final page out slow, deliberate. Holds it over the fire. Lilith can't d from now on the only story allowed is the one that happens while no one is writing it down. The page catches. Burns white, then gold, then nothing. The fire flares high for one heartbeat, throwing their shadows huge against the broken dome. In the flare we glimpse every version of the city that ever was, the gray prison, the screaming rainbow, the starving dark, the fragile dawn. Then the flare dies. Only ordinary fire remains. The author speaks, voice soft as ash. The author, the great Endarkenment is complete. Not because we won. Because we finally stopped trying to. Silence. Real silence. The kind that has weight and mercy. Elias stands, swaying a little, and walks to the edge of the broken dome. Looks out over the city waking up without permission. Somewhere below, a baby cries, then laughs. A dog barks. Someone starts singing off-key and doesn't stop. Elias to the horizon, hear that's the sound of nobody saving anybody and everybody being okay with it. He turns back to the circle. Elias can't d bar opens at dusk. First round S on the house. Bring your own color or don't. We're out of the business of mandating wonder. One by one they stand. No hugs. No speeches. Just 5 people who survived the end of the world walking down the hill together into a morning that has no idea what to do with itself. The camera stays on the empty observatory. The fire burns low. On the ground, where the book used to lie, only a faint scorch mark in the perfect shape of an open hand. Wind moves through the broken dome. The ashes lift, swirl once, and spell a single word in mid-air before scattering enough. The word holds for one heartbeat, then dissolves into ordinary dust. Fade to black. No title card. No credits. Just the sound of 5 sets of footsteps fading down the hill, and, very far away, a child laughing in a color that will never have a name. The end. End credits begin over pure black screen, white text only, slow upward scroll, no music, just faint wind and distant footsteps echoing like an empty theater. A film by no one of us. Directed by nobody in particular. Cast Elias Vanta. himself on the days he still answered to the name Lilith. The woman who kept the shadow after the locket broke the author. A man who lost his eyes twice and still saw more than the rest of us Verides. The girl who learned green is just a promise you keep with plants Juno. The kid who tried to outlaw stories and got outvoted by laughter. Crew written by, the margins of every book we burned cinematography, whatever light was brave enough to show up edited by, forgetting produced by, 22 years of stubborn mornings. Special thanks to the fireflies that refused to sign releases to the broken street lamp on Rue Obscure that still flickers at 3:17 a.m. To every child who drew a sun with a smiley face and never asked permission. Scroll freezes halfway, a single new line appears, typewriter clack by clack, Elias Vanta, a short, unreliable biography everything he never told anyone, in the order he forgot it. Born the year the ministry outlawed the word maybe. Mother named him after a dead saint who specialized in lost causes. Age 6, watched his first real sunrise through a crack in the blackout curtains. Reported it to the kindness drones. Got his first demerit and his first secret religion in the same afternoon. Age 12, stole a black market paperback copy of pre-Endarkenment poetry. Read it by flashlight under the bed. The words tasted like rust and oxygen. Decided rust and oxygen were worth dying for. Age 17, joined the underground printing press that ran on pedal power and spite. Learned to set type backwards so the ink would forgive him. Age 23, fell in love with a woman who could dream in ultraviolet. She vanished into a re-education center on a Tuesday. He still leaves her name out of every toast, just in case. Age 31, first time he killed a man. A kindness drone wearing his best friend's face. Still flinches when someone smiles too perfectly. Age 38, met Lilith in an alley that smelled like wet ink and gunpowder. She handed him the book. He handed her the rest of his life without reading the terms. Age 44, stood on a rooftop and watched the sky bleed every color it had been forced to forget. Cried for the first time since childhood. The tears came out clear. He took it as a good sign. Age 51, opened a bar called The Last Match. House rule, you can bring any story you want, but you have to leave it at the door when you go. Age 57 tonight, fought 10 kids who wanted to outlaw stories. 1. Lost 3 ribs and the last excuse he had for staying angry. Age unknown, finally understood the punchline. The universe isn't trying to teach us anything. It's just watching to see what we do with the dark once we admit it's ours. Typewriter stops dead. One final line, centered, no clacks, just appears, he never found out what his real name was. He decided Elias was close enough. Text fades to nothing. Black screen holds for 5 full seconds of silence. Then, a match strikes off screen. A cigarette catches. A long, satisfied exhale you can almost taste. Fade to black. The real, permanent kind this time. The end. Post-credits scene, Ultraviolet Dreams compilation plays after the final black, no warning, no title card. Screen stays black for 3 full seconds. Then a faint ultraviolet glow flickers the color that officially doesn't exist, the one that sits just past violet and just before pain. The glow resolves into grainy, handheld footage shot on an illegal analog camera that only records in wavelength span since the Endarkenment began. Title burns in, handwritten in ultraviolet ink that you can only see if you let your eyes unfocus, Ultraviolet Dreams, a compilation recovered from Elias Vanta's private reel, never meant for daylight. Cut to, a woman early 20s, hair shaved on one side, eyes reflecting ultraviolet like cat stands in an abandoned rooftop greenhouse. She is holding a single violet flower that glows from inside. She whispers to it, "Grow in the color they said would make us violent." The flower opens wider, revealing petals made of pure ultraviolet light. She smiles the way people smile when they remember how to be dangerous. Cut to, a child maybe 8 in a city with no birth records draws on a concrete wall with a piece of contraband ultraviolet chalk. The drawing is a crude sun, but its rays are jagged, hungry. When the child finishes, the drawing lifts off the wall and hovers, pulsing. The child laughs so hard they fall over. Cut to, Elias age 23, younger than we've ever seen him, hair still dark, and the woman he loved, the one who dreamed in ultraviolet, lie on a rooftop at 4 a.m. They are passing a tiny glass vial back and forth. Inside the vial, liquid ultraviolet, swirling like captured nebula. She tilts it into his eyes. 1 drop each. They blink, and for a moment their irises are pure ultraviolet fire. They kiss like it's the last legal act left on earth. Cut to, same woman, months later, being dragged away by kindness drones. She is screaming, but the sound is replaced by ultraviolet static. Young Elias tries to run after her. A drone tases him. As he falls, the camera hidden in his coat catches her face one last time. She mouths a single word that the ultraviolet subtitles translate as, "Remember the color they're afraid of." Cut to, present-day Elias 57, scarred, sitting alone in the ruins of the last match bar after closing. He pulls out that same tiny glass vial, empty now, but still faintly glowing. He holds it up to the firelight. 1 microscopic drop remains at the bottom. He considers it for a long time. He uncorks the vial. Lets the single drop fall onto his tongue. His eyes ignite ultraviolet for exactly 3 heartbeats. In that light we see every version of her he ever lost, standing behind him in the empty bar, smiling like forgiveness. The glow fades. His eyes go back to normal tired brown. He smiles small, private, final. Elias barely audible, still violent. Still beautiful. He pockets the empty vial, stands, turns off the last lantern by hand. Screen flares pure ultraviolet for 1 blinding frame. Then total black. A single line appears in ultraviolet text, visible only if you let the afterimage burn in, "She kept dreaming." He kept the color alive in the only place they couldn't legislate, behind the eyes. The line fades. Absolute silence. Absolute dark. End of transmission. Front page, genre and tone primer. Genre blend, primary, philosophical neo-noir, secondary, dystopian mythopoeia speculative fiction. Tertiary, post-revolution allegory. Tone and influences, visual tone, if Blade Runner and Sin City were drained of all but one outlaw color, then directed by Andrei Tarkovsky in a mood of grim wonder. Literary tone, Raymond Chandler's similes crossbred with China Mieville's weird fiction, narrated by the ghost of Ursula K. Le Guin. Thematic core, a story about freedom that is more interested in the hangover than the rebellion. It asks, what happens after you win? Central conflict, not a war of guns, but of spectrums. The struggle between, control monochrome, forced harmony. Chaos, unregulated color, raw humanity. Curated meaning, the specialist's hyperspecialization. Viewer pre-reader preparation, this is a slow burn atmospheric piece. The first 5 minutes are a tone poem. Dialogue is metaphor-laden and deliberate. Characters speak in loaded, stylized prose. The plot is a mythic quest: find the author, recover the eyes, crash the auction that evolves into a philosophical trial. The intermission is essential. It is the narrative's self-correcting mechanism, warning against expecting a conventional third act. The ending is quiet, ambiguous, and human-scaled. Victory is measured in the right to be messy, not in permanent utopia. Key themes to track: censorship as the removal of contrast. Memory as the last unpaved territory. Freedom versus the craving for order. The violence and beauty of pure expression. The burden of those who remember the before. Back matter, technical and concept document. Document, the Endarkenment style guide and narrative architecture for directors, designers, composers, and scholars of the text. Visual language. Color script, Acts I and II, dominated by government grays 001-009, punctuated by illegal, vivid accents arterial red, phosphor yellow, obsidian black. Act 3 post-revolution, a bruised, overwhelming palette. Colors are raw, uncurated, sometimes sickly. The world is oversaturated yet exhausted. The specialist S scenes, high contrast B and W with a single, precise accent, the dried rose, a silver Mobius strip. Shadow as character. Shadows are not mere absence of light. They are tactile, liquid, and sometimes predatory. They should feel like they have agency and density. The book FX, its text doesn't reflect light, it drinks it and emits a deeper dark. When active, words hover like static charged smoke. 2 sound and music notes. City ambience, the hum of suppressed energy. Phosphor rain should sizzle softly on surfaces, like static on a dead channel. The midnight local, sound should drop out when it moves. No clatter of rails. Instead, a deep sub-bass tremor and the distant, distorted echo of forgotten advertisements. Music, a score blending, low, mournful brass traditional noir. Glistening, atonal synthesizers, the dying tech. Distorted, slowed down samples of 20th century jazz, memory of a dead world. In Act 3, introduce raw, imperfect acoustic elements, a detuned guitar, a breathy flute sound becoming human again. 3 key technical challenges and solutions. The black cigarette, suggest with motion-tracked VFX that slightly warps and darkens the light around the ember. It's less about a CGI hole and more about the impression of light being vacuumed away. The living shadow, use practical interaction, actors reacting to a void space enhanced with CGI that mimics fluid dynamics and ink drop dispersion. It should feel physical, not ghostly. The palace explosion, the climax should not be fireballs. It should be waves of pure, spectral color flooding the frame, bleaching the image before collapsing into serene ruin. Think color as sound wave. 4 narrative structure breakdown. Traditional 3-act map, Act 1 setup, scenes 1 to 3. The case, the threat, the descent. Act 2 confrontation, scenes 4 to 5. The journey, the assault on the palace. Act 2.5 the pivot, intermission. Meta-commentary and tonal reset. Act 3 resolution, scenes 6 to 9. The reckoning, the defense, the letting go. Mythic structure, a descent quest return cycle, but the return is to a changed world where the hero's role is obsolete. Philosophical arc, moves from freedom from oppression to freedom to create chaos to freedom from the need to control freedom. V-casting and performance notes. Elias Vanta, requires an actor who can deliver highly stylized, metaphor-heavy dialogue with weary, grounded sincerity. The voice is 50% of the performance. Think, a poetic boxer. Lilith, an ethereal, otherworldly presence with undercurrents of immense strength. She is less human and more a manifestation of resistant memory. The specialist, cold, precise, unervingly calm. The performance is in the stillness and the eyes. The villainy is in the impeccable logic, not the rage. The author, even with restored sight, he should listen and look differently as if perceiving layers of reality beneath the surface. 6. Thematic glossary. Chromatic terrorism, the state's term for unauthorized beauty or emotion. Desaturation, not just a removal of color, but a surgical removal of the capacity for aesthetic rebellion. The Endarkenment, the state of liberated, uncertain, and self-determined reality that follows the collapse of imposed order. It is not darkness as evil, but as potential and rest. Hyperspecialization, the specialist's proposed solution, voluntary, deeply engaging prisons of personal meaning that prevent collective chaos. Final design principle, every frame, every line, every sound should serve the core paradox of the story, that true liberation is terrifying, beautiful, and utterly, exhaustingly worth it. The style is the statement.